The tiled floor is cool under your shoes, and the air in the telegraph office still holds the night's dampness. A small clock ticks behind the public counter, steady and unbothered. You set your fingers on the wooden edge, feel the worn grain, and find the key that fits the message drawers. Metal slides softly on metal as you open them, and paper shifts with a dry, familiar whisper. In the register book, yesterday's entries sit in tidy lines, with carbon copies tucked where they belong. You warm the ink pad with the heel of your palm, then test the date stamp once, slow and precise. Outside, a railway porter crosses the platform, boots tapping, while the station begins to wake in small sounds. In the overnight basket, there is one smudged message slip, its destination code incomplete, and a receipt number that doesn't quite settle. You place it in a tray marked to verify, and return to the calm work of preparing for the first customer. As the lamps fade against early daylight, the wire room waits behind the partition, ready for its first clean clicks. You take out the fee table and smooth it flat, even though it never really curls. You run your thumb down the columns, word rates by distance, and the small surcharge for delivery beyond the town boundary. It's the kind of paper you could almost memorize, but you still like seeing it there. A quiet routine is made of little confirmations. You open the cash drawer, count yesterday's coins by touch, and set the change cup in its usual place. Then you look again at that smudged slip in the verify tray, because it's already tugging at you. The paper is thin, almost translucent at the edges where fingers have worried it. The destination code is half there, one letter softened into a grey bruise of ink, and the receipt number, written in the corner, matches a number that should belong to late yesterday afternoon. You don't like that, not because it's dramatic, but because the order of things matters here. You turn to the register book and find the place where that receipt should be. You trace down the neat lines, names and towns, word counts, fees collected, and there it is, the same receipt number, but beside a different message entirely. A simple note to a cloth merchant in a nearby city, paid in exact coins, stamped at 440, so the smudged slip can't be right, not as it sits. It's either an error or a copy, or something written down in the wrong moment. And the first concrete thing you have to do today is decide where to place that uncertainty. You could chase it now, wake the station master with a question before he's had his tea, or you can keep the counter calm and let the day begin and return to it when you have more hands free. You choose the second. You take a pencil and write a small note on a scrap of paper, receipt number, smudged code, found in overnight basket. You tuck that note beneath the slip, so the two stay together. Then you slide the tray to the back corner of your desk, where it can wait without vanishing. The clock ticks on and the office feels steady again, even with a pebble tucked into the shoe of the morning. You draw the curtain a little, just enough to soften the grey light. You straighten the stack of blank message forms, each one printed with boxes and lines. Name, address, place of origin, destination, number of words, fee paid. The forms smell faintly of dry pulp and ink, and of the cupboard where they sleep. Behind the partition, you hear the quiet settling of the wire room, a relay's tiny spring shifting as the building warms. You take your seat on the tall stool and pull the register book closer. At the top of a fresh page, you stamp today's date again, more firmly this time. The stamp makes a gentle thump, and the ink leaves a crisp oval. A few minutes later, the first footfalls come in from the platform. A man in a cap pauses at the door and wipes his boots, though the tiles are already clean. He's not a customer, just passing through, but he glances at the counter the way people do. They look at the telegraph office like it's a window into somewhere else. Not far away, the first train of the day exhales a soft hiss that lingers in the walls. You hear a distant clank of coupling and then the familiar hush that follows. A young messenger boy appears, breath held like he's trying not to disturb you. He slips a folded paper under the little brass grill and nods as if delivering something sacred. You unfold it slowly because fast hands make mistakes. It's a service note from the night clerk at the next station down the line. He writes that they had light rain and the line had a faint crackle near midnight, but it cleared. He adds, almost as an afterthought, that a traveler left a message with them for your town, paid in advance. No copy attached. Just that. You feel the first small tightening in the day, the sense that the wire has already been busy while you slept. You take out the in basket and check again, in case the traveler's message is the smudged slip. The paper in your tray could fit the idea, but the destination code is wrong and the receipt number is wrong and the words are hard to read. You write a short reply on a service pad. You ask for the traveler's sender name and the exact receipt number and the destination as they recorded it. You keep your phrasing plain because the wire prefers plainness. Then you carry the note behind the partition into the wire room's quieter air. The wire room is smaller than the public counter space, and it holds a different kind of calm. There is oil in the wood and dust on the corners, and the faint metallic scent of warmed brass. You sit at the instrument table, where the key rests under your right hand like a familiar handle. The sounder sits nearby, two little levers poised to speak in clicks. You test the line with a light touch, a simple call sign to the next station. The sounder answers cleanly, a crisp series of taps that tells you the line is awake. You send your service query, slow and careful, and then you wait for the acknowledgement. While you wait, you listen, because listening is part of the job that no one sees. A good clerk learns the difference between a healthy circuit and a tired one. Today the clicks are clear, but there's a softness at the edge of them, like a coin struck through cloth. It may be nothing, or it may be the first sign of damp in a junction box somewhere along the track. You make a small note in the maintenance book, just a line, time and impression. Then you return to the public counter as the station begins to gather people in ones and twos. The first true customer is a shopkeeper you've seen many mornings. His hands smell of fruit crates and cold iron from the shop shutter. He has a short message for a supplier in the city, asking for a delivery to come on Thursday. He speaks in full sentences, as people often do at first, and you translate gently. You remove extra words without changing meaning, like trimming a wick so it burns steady. Please send oranges. Thursday morning, stop confirm, price stop. You count the words under your breath, not because it's secret, but because it's rhythm. You tell him the fee, and he places coins on the counter one by one. You take them, place them into the drawer, and write the receipt number in the corner of the form. You stamp the time, and your stamp leaves the familiar mark. Then you copy the message to the transmission slip, the one that will go behind the partition. Your handwriting has been trained to be unambiguous. No loops that can become other letters, no flourishes that invite misreading. The shopkeeper signs, and you tear off his receipt with a slow, clean pull. He leaves with the receipt folded carefully in his pocket, as if it's a promise he can hold. Another customer steps up almost immediately, a woman with a shawl pulled tight at her throat. She wants to ask after her sister, who traveled to a different town 2 days ago and hasn't written. Her message is longer, and the words matter to her. You feel that weight, and you keep your voice calm. You explain that each word costs, and she nods, swallowing. Together, you shorten it without making it cold. Arrived safely, question, stop, reply at once. Stop. She pays in small coins, warm from her hand. You write her name carefully, and you repeat the destination aloud so she can hear it. She corrects the spelling of the street, just slightly, and you thank her. That's the work. Not drama, just the steady shaping of meaning so it can travel as clicks. And as the line at the counter grows, you feel the day settle into its first real pace. A foreman from the goods yard arrives, coat smelling of coal dust and wet rope. He needs to notify a timber merchant that a wagon will be delayed. He speaks quickly, used to men who act fast, but here you slow it down without resisting him. You ask for the wagon number, the expected delay, and the name of the person to whom the message should be addressed. You write it all down, and then you read it back. He nods once, satisfied, and slides a coin across the tile counter edge. It lands with a soft ring. You give him the receipt, and he is gone, boots already turning toward the platform. For a brief moment, there's a gap in the line. You use it to glance toward the verify tray again. The smudged slip sits patiently, like it knows it will be touched later. You feel the small irritation of it, and also a kind of respect. Paper can wait, but a queue cannot. The next customer is a traveler, hat in hand, eyes a little tired from early trains. He wants to wire ahead to a boarding house, to hold a room. He has an address written in his notebook, and his handwriting is hurried. You ask him to spell the town name, and then the street, and then the house name. He does, and you repeat it back, because the wire does not forgive guesswork. As you fill the form, you hear the first delivery runner of the day in the hallway. The messenger boy is back, shifting his weight from foot to foot, waiting for outgoing slips to take into town. You stack 3 completed messages, align their edges, and clip them together with a small brass clip. Then you hand them through, along with a delivery book that needs signatures. The boy tucks them inside his satchel and nods again, solemn as a clerk himself. He disappears into the station's widening morning. The clock behind you ticks, and you keep half an ear on it, not because you're worried, but because time is part of the service you sell. A message is a promise of speed, and speed needs measuring. When the line at the counter swells again, you move through the routine like a practiced machine. Listen, clarify, trim, count, collect, stamp, copy, file. Each action has its own place, like tools hung on pegs. If you misplace one step, the whole bench becomes messy. And then, near the middle of the morning, the familiar factory runner arrives. You know him by his cap and by the way he keeps his eyes down. He works for the big works on the edge of town where steam hammers shake the ground. His messages are usually orders and confirmations, nothing fancy. Today, he has a form already filled in, folded twice, and held between 2 fingers as if it's delicate. He slides it through the grill and speaks softly. He says it's urgent, but then he adds something that changes the shape of your next hour. He asks you not to send it yet. He asks you to hold it until a specific minute, 10:27 by the station clock. That isn't standard. Messages are paid for, accepted, and transmitted as soon as the line is free. Holding a message introduces a strange kind of responsibility, like holding someone's breath in a jar. You look at the form without unfolding it yet. You ask him, calmly, why the minute matters. He hesitates, then says only that it must arrive after another message, not before. He doesn't say more, and you don't press him in front of other customers. But you feel the second small pebble drop into the day. You can refuse on principle and tell him to come back at 10:27. Or you can accept it and keep it safe and let the factory's schedule become part of your own. You choose to accept it. You nod once, and you tell him you'll hold it until 10:27, no earlier. You take the coin he offers, and you write the receipt number, and you stamp the time of acceptance. Then, with a pencil, you make a small note on the top edge of the form. Hold until 10:27. You slide it beneath your blotter, where it will stay flat and clean. The runner's shoulders loosen just slightly, as if you've taken a weight from him. He leaves quickly, as if he shouldn't be seen standing still. And now you find yourself watching the clock more than you like. Even as other customers step up, even as you count words and make change, part of you keeps measuring the minutes. 10:15, 10:16, 10:17. You tell yourself it's harmless, just a held note. But the job is built on flow, and you've placed a stone in the stream. The rest of the morning goes on. A man wires to his brother about a missed meeting. A teacher wires to a supplier about slates. A farmer, smelling of damp wool, wires to a market agent about the price of pigs. Each one speaks, and you shape, and you send. Between customers, you step behind the partition to tap out outgoing messages on the key. You lay the transmission slip on the table, and your fingers move with steady economy. Tap, tap, pause, tap. You listen for the receiving station's acknowledgement, the short confirmation that tells you they've copied. Then you stamp the sent time and place the office copy into its pigeonhole. The pigeonholes line the wall like little wooden mouths, each labeled with destinations and routes. Upline, downline, local delivery. Onward to the coastal circuit. You're not traveling anywhere today, but your hands are constantly sending things away. And in the middle of all that, the held message waits under your blotter. You feel it there when you rest your palm on the paper. It's a quiet, physical reminder, like a letter you haven't opened. At 10:24, you find a moment when the counter is empty. You take a breath and lift the blotter's corner. You slide the factory message out and unfold it. The handwriting is the works manager's, not the runner's. It's neat and a little sharp. The destination is a foundry in another city, and the wording is clipped. Ship plate iron by first goods train stop confirm quantity stop. There's a department name at the end and a surname that could be read two ways if you aren't careful. You trace it with your finger, making sure you see it correctly. Then you refold it and place it back under the blotter. 10:25, 10:26, 10:27. You bring the message out from under the blotter as if it might bruise. You smooth the paper once, aligning it with the edge of the desk, and you feel the thinness of it under your fingertips. You glance at the station clock again, not because you doubt it, but because you've promised the minute. The counter space is empty for once. The next customer hasn't arrived yet, and the messenger boy is out on his round, so you step behind the partition with the held message, and the office sound changes as you cross into the wire room. It's quieter back here, but not silent. The sounder makes its small, patient clicks, and the relay has a faint hum that you feel more than hear. You set the factory message in front of you, and you take up the transmission slip you'll keep as your office copy. You write the destination clearly, and you rewrite the surname with extra care, making each letter stand apart. Then you rest your hand on the key. The brass is cool. The rhythm is already in your fingers. Learn the way a person learns to tie boots in the dark. You call the next station on the route. Tap, tap, tap. A pause. Tap. The sounder answers. Clean enough. Not perfect, but open. You begin. You send the address first because the wire likes order. You send the count because the receiving clerk will be counting too. Then you send the words of the message, pared down and plain. Ship, plate, iron. By first goods train, confirm quantity, stop. You keep your spaces even. You keep your hand light so you don't strike twice by accident. And when you reach the surname and department line, you slow down just a fraction. You imagine the other clerk, somewhere along the rails, pencil poised, hearing your taps through his own tired instrument. You give him time to copy. Then you end with the clear closing that says you're done. And you wait for the acknowledgement. The sounder answers, but not as neatly as you'd like. The reply comes with a slight wavering, like a voice heard through a door. There's a faint extra click in places, a little double touch. It could be his hand, it could be the line. You ask for repeat back, the way you do when a word matters. Not because you're alarmed, but because your job is to be the careful person in the chain. The answer comes again. This time, there's a longer pause between parts. And the last name, there's the smallest hesitation around it. The sense of a letter not quite landing. You feel your shoulders tighten. Just a little. You request it once more, politely, with the short service phrasing that means, repeat surname, confirm. The far station repeats. It's close. It's almost what you sent. But one letter has shifted. The kind of shift that can happen when a line is soft and a person is trying not to hold up traffic. You look down at your own copy. You look at the ink you laid down in your steady hand. You compare it to what you heard. And you make a decision, quiet and simple. You send the surname again, this time with a spacing that makes each letter feel separate. You slow the department line too, because it's attached to the name like a tag. The far station acknowledges. This time it sounds more certain. You stamp the sent time on your copy and you place the factory message into the outgoing file, the place where it becomes part of the day. You can't unsend it now. It's gone into the network. and the rest of the afternoon will depend on how cleanly it arrived and how faithfully it's understood. You sit for a moment, listening to the line. There's that faint softness again at the edge of the clicks. Not constant. Just enough to notice. You reach for the maintenance notebook and write one calm line. Time, brief note, line slightly weak. Requested repeats on urgent traffic. The pencil scratches softly. Paper takes the story without judgment. Then you stand, straighten your sleeves, and step back out to the public counter. The station has filled in while you were behind the partition. A few people stand near the timetable board. A porter rolls a cart that rattles lightly over the tiles, and a man at the counter clears his throat, ready with his message. You nod, and you let the routine take you again. He has a note for a cousin about arriving on the afternoon train. You guide his words into telegraph shape. Arrive 3:20 stop, meet platform stop. You count the words, you name the fee. Coins touch the counter with their familiar dull ring. You write the receipt number, and you tear the receipt cleanly. You place the message in the outgoing stack. And now the held message is no longer under your blotter. That space is empty again. But the responsibility hasn't left. It's simply moved. It's out on the line now, traveling as taps, passing from hand to hand, office to office. As the morning continues, the rhythm stays steady, but the little delays begin to show. A clerk learns to feel time not only by the clock, but by the thickness of paper stacks. Incoming slips start to gather in the wire room's receiving tray. Outgoing forms begin to wait in a shallow pile instead of being sent immediately. Nothing dramatic, just a slight change in the smoothness of the day. When you get a gap at the counter, you step behind the partition and take your seat again. You place your message book open in front of you, and you set your pencil in the groove worn into the table. The sounder speaks. You listen first, as you always do, then you copy. The incoming traffic is ordinary. A confirmation of a coal delivery, a note from a station master about a lost trunk, a brief service message asking if your line is clear for a scheduled block of traffic. You write each one into the book in neat strokes. You stamp the received time. You tear the slip along the perforation. You sort it into pigeonholes. Local delivery to be sent out with the messenger. Pick up at counter. Hold for the addressee. Onward transmission. Relay to the next circuit. Your hands move with practiced economy, and in between messages, you hear the line's small imperfections. A dot that arrives as a soft double. A dash that comes in slightly thin, as if the current is tired. You adjust the relay tension with a careful turn, the way you might adjust a lamp wick. You clean the contacts with a strip of paper, drawn through once, then again. The metal brightens slightly. The clicks sharpen. For a few minutes, it seems better. Then, gently, the softness returns. You send a calm service query to the next station. Line weak here. Do you observe? The reply takes longer than usual. When it comes, it's brief. Slight trouble, possibly damp, observed since early. You write it down. You don't sigh. Not yet. This is part of the work too. The public thinks of the telegraph as instant. The clerks know it as a living chain of wood poles, glass insulators, wire joints, and weather. It's quick when it's healthy. It's still useful when it's imperfect. It just asks more patience from the hands at the keys. By late morning, the counter line thins. People have gone back to shops and yards and kitchens. The station itself settles into a softer hum, trains arriving and departing on their schedule. This is when the quieter half of the job becomes the larger half. You take the cash box out and set it on the desk. You count the coins by type. Pennies in one stack, sixpences in another, shillings laid flat so they don't roll. You compare receipts to the register book entries, receipt number, sender name, destination, word count, fee, stamp time, a tidy chain, one link to the next. Where there are extra delivery charges, you check the boundary map pinned inside the drawer. It's a simple thing, that map. Just streets in thin lines and a shaded edge where the town ends. But it keeps arguments from happening. It keeps the work from turning sharp. You paste the carbon copies into the day's ledger with a thin line of gum. The smell is faintly sweet. You press each copy flat with the back of your hand so it doesn't curl. Then you fold the ledger tape around the growing bundle and tie it with a practiced twist. You set aside the delivery bundle for the messenger's next run. You stack the slips in the order he'll walk them, from the bakery street first, then the market road, then the farther cottages. You add the ones marked paid delivery. You clip them. You write a small note in the delivery book so each signature will match the right piece of paper. These are the unseen parts of the telegraph. The public imagines only the clicking, but most of the day is paper. Paper that must match other paper, money that must match numbers, names that must match letters. At midday, the light changes, the window glass turns pale, and dust becomes visible in the sunbeam like slow snow. The station smells faintly of warm metal and steam. Somewhere outside, a kettle is boiling in a porter's room. The clerk's lunch is not elaborate. When you have a moment, you take out what you brought. A small sandwich wrapped in paper. A piece of cheese. Maybe an apple, if you remembered. You eat slowly, because you might have to stop at any second. You chew while you listen for the sounder. It's common to eat with one ear tuned to the wire. Even when the messages are quiet, you don't fully leave. And while you're finishing, you remember the held message again. Not the act of sending it. That's done. But the question of whether it arrived cleanly. You find your outgoing copy, and you look at the surname once more. You trace it with your finger again as if touch could steady it. Then you put it back in its file. Some things can only be confirmed by the return. After lunch, the counter stays mostly quiet. This is when the books matter most. You open the tariff book again and check a longer message you took earlier, making sure you charged the correct rate. Long messages are easy to miscount if someone spoke quickly. You count the words again, tapping each one lightly with your pencil. The number matches. You feel a small relief, not excitement, just the comfort of correctness. Then you turn to the register and make sure each outgoing message has a matching transmitted timestamp. If a message is accepted at the counter and not sent, it becomes a problem. Not a dramatic problem. A plain one. A customer will return. A station master might ask questions, so you make certain the chain is complete. You also check the service messages. Those don't have customer receipts. They have their own log, a quieter column in the book. Line condition, delays, requests for repeats, routing notes. These are the clerks speaking to other clerks, maintaining the invisible road. You hear the sounder again, and you push your chair back. You go behind the partition. The incoming slip is a reply to a goods yard question, short and direct. Delay due to shunting stop arrive tomorrow morning stop. You stamp it, file it for local delivery. Then another comes, and another. A few more than usual. The line is alive again, but the softness is still there. You catch yourself leaning closer to the sounder, as if your ear could improve the current. It can't. But leaning is a habit of attention. When a faint, irregular chatter begins, you notice it immediately. It's not a full break. It's more like the line is speaking with a slight stutter. Some clicks arrive with a tiny echo. Some spaces feel shorter than they should. It's the sort of thing that makes a clerk's pencil slow down. You don't panic. You do what you were trained to do. You send a service query, brief and calm, to the next station. Your line clear question, experiencing irregular. The answer comes, but it's delayed. When it arrives, it carries the same slight stutter. They report the same. Possible trouble beyond them as well. You write it down. You adjust your relay again, just a hair. You clean the key contacts. You check the battery indicator if you have one, making sure your own supply is steady. In many offices, the batteries are in a cupboard nearby, rows of jars with plates inside. If the voltage sags, the whole line suffers. You open the cupboard and look. The jars are still. No leaks, no obvious corrosion. The smell is sharp and familiar, like metal and vinegar. You close it again. Or not only you. Messages begin to stack in the receiving tray. Not a tower, just a shallow pile. But it's enough that you feel the day goes slightly behind. You work steadily. You copy. You stamp. You sort. You send acknowledgements. You request repeats when a word lands unclear. You're gentle but firm because the other clerks are dealing with the same softness. There's no use snapping across a wire. It doesn't improve. And then, in the middle of ordinary traffic, you hear something that makes your attention sharpen. Not a loud sound, just a call sign from the direction of the city office on the same circuit the factory message went through. They're calling you. You answer. They begin to send a brief note, and you copy it carefully. It's not a customer message, it's service traffic. They say they have received an urgent factory order from your town earlier. They ask to confirm the addressee spelling as copied. They send the surname they have. It's the version with the shifted letter. You feel your stomach drop, but gently, like a weight settling. This is exactly what you worried about. You open your outgoing copy and compare. You send back the correct spelling from your slip, letter by letter, spaced clearly. The city clerk acknowledges. They say they will forward the corrected spelling to the destination office, and they will mark their log. It's not a disaster, it's a small drift, caught in time, but you feel the reality of it. Meaning can slide, not by malice, just by a tired line and a human ear. You make a note in your book. Urgent message, repeat required, surname corrected via service. The pencil line is calm. Your pulse is not, but you keep it out of your hands. When you return to the public counter, the factory runner is there again. He's come back sooner than you expected. He stands at the grill, cap in his hands. He asks, softly, if the message has gone. You tell him yes, sent at the promised minute. You keep your voice even. He asks if it went cleanly. You could say yes to make him leave, but your job is to be accurate, not comforting. So you say the line was a little weak, and you requested repeats, and you have sent a spelling correction to the city office to ensure it's right. You watch his face as you say it. He looks down, then nods once. He doesn't seem angry. He seems relieved that someone is watching the details. He says he will tell the works manager. Then he's gone again, steps quick and quiet. The afternoon begins in earnest with replies. Telegraph work often comes in waves. A message goes out in the morning. The reply returns after lunch, once the other office has delivered it to a desk and a person has read it and decided what to say back. So the sounder starts to speak more often now. Short confirmations. Requests for more detail. A long reply from a supplier who likes to use extra words until you trim them on the way in. You copy each incoming message into the book, you stamp the received time, you tear the slip, you sort it. And as you sort, you compare names and addresses with the outgoing stubs. This is how you keep the office honest. A reply without a match becomes a question. A match with a slight difference becomes a bigger question. You have a small method. You take the incoming slip, you glance at the signature line first, then you check the address block. Then you check the body, looking for reference words, the kind that tie it to an earlier message. Confirm, received, regarding, ship, delay. You've learned the language of business and railways in these small fragments. It's like reading the town's pulse through narrow windows. A reply comes in that catches your eye. It's on the same route as the factory urgent order. It begins like a confirmation. Will ship plate iron first goods train stop. So far, so good. Then it names the department, and then it gives a surname in the signature line. It's almost right, just one letter different, as if the earlier drift is still echoing. You feel the weight of that small difference settle on your desk, because a reply is not only information, it's a record that will be filed. A record that might be used to argue later. A record that might decide whether a wagon is loaded or not. You take out your sent copy of the factory message, you lay it beside the reply. You compare the spelling. There it is. A mismatch. Not huge, but enough. You don't want to send the reply out into the works with a wrong name attached, even if the meaning is clear. A clerk's authority is made of small correctness. So, you do what you can do. You send a verification request to the office that originated the reply. Confirm signature spelling, urgent factory order, please verify. You keep it polite, you keep it short. While you wait, you take the reply and you mark it lightly in pencil at the top corner. To verify. You don't stamp it for delivery yet. You don't put it in the messenger bundle. You let it sit in a tray near your hand where it won't be forgotten. Then you do another small, human part of the job. You ask a question out loud, softly, to the empty air, as if speaking it helps. Is it their spelling, or is it ours? You already suspect the answer, but you want confirmation because you're going to write it down. The counter bell tinkles as another customer arrives. A man with ink stains on his fingers, perhaps from the printing shop. He wants to send a short message to a newspaper office in the city. Advertisement proof ready? Stop, send boy, stop. You take it, you process it, you collect the fee, you stamp, copy, file. Even with the question waiting in the tray, you keep the present moment tidy. That's another part of the work. You don't let one uncertainty spoil the whole desk. In the early afternoon, the messenger boy returns. He brings signatures in the delivery book and a few coins collected for delivery fees that were due on receipt. He also brings a small bundle of incoming messages that were left at the counter while you were in the wire room. You sort them quickly. Most are ordinary. One is a request from a farm out beyond the boundary, asking for a message to be delivered to a cousin in town. You check the delivery surcharge. You explain it when the farmhand returns later. No one is upset. They expected it. People accept small charges more easily when you're calm and consistent. The irregular chatter on the line comes and goes. It's like a cough that won't fully clear. Every so often you must ask for repeats. Every so often you must wait a little longer for acknowledgements. And each time the receiving tray grows slightly, then shrinks again as you catch up. The day is not out of hand. It's just not as smooth as you like. Your verification request returns. The city office sends back the spelling they have in their log, and it matches the shifted letter, not your careful copy. That tells you something plain and a little frustrating. The error has become real in their paperwork. It's not just a faint sound on a weak line anymore, it's ink on their side. You take your pencil and underline the surname on your own outgoing copy once, gently, as if that makes it steadier. Then you reach for the service pad again because the way you fix a network is one small correction at a time. You send a second note, shorter than the first, advise destination office correct spelling as follows, and then you give it letter by letter, with careful spacing between each one. The answer comes back, after a delay, acknowledgement only, but the clicks have that thinness again, that slight double touch. You don't argue with it. You write in your maintenance book, correction sent twice, awaiting confirmation from destination. The office stays quiet around you, but your desk has become a place where a single letter matters. You take the reply slip that started this, and you add a neat pencil note in the corner. Hold for works runner, verify spelling before delivery. It's a small act of control, and it helps. Because the rest of the incoming traffic doesn't stop just because one message is uncertain. The sounder calls again, a different station this time, and you answer out of habit before you even think. It's a routine request, asking if you can take a relay for 2 messages while their operator steps away. You can, so you do. You take the first message, copy it into the book, stamp the time, and send it onward. It's an order for flour, then a note about a missing crate. Ordinary words, ordinary needs, moving through your hands like thread through a needle. And all the while, the tray with the factory reply sits within reach, waiting for you to decide when it can become someone else's problem. The public counterbell tinkles once, and you step out from behind the partition. A woman stands there with a small parcel under her arm, wrapped in brown paper and string. She wants to send a message to her husband in a nearby town, telling him the parcel is on the afternoon train. She speaks softly, like the telegraph office is a library. You guide her words into the plain telegraph shape, parcel sent today, stop meet train stop. You count the words, name the fee, and take the coins with slow care. The receipt book opens to the next number, and you write it neatly because order is comfort. When she leaves, the office feels briefly empty again. You glance at the station clock without thinking. The afternoon is moving on, and you can feel the day wanting to close, even though it's still early. Back in the wire room, you sit again and you rest your fingertips on the edge of the message book. The pencil point is a little dull, so you turn it in the sharpener, one slow rotation, then another. The sound of it is quiet, a dry scraping, and it steadies your attention. Then the sounder speaks with a longer message coming in. You listen for the first few characters to catch the sending office's identity. It's the destination city for the urgent factory order, not the intermediate office. That makes you sit a fraction straighter. They're asking for a repeat of the address line and the surname, and they add a note, signal weak, confirm carefully. So the trouble has traveled with the traffic, and it's made extra work for everyone along the route. You pull your outgoing copy again, and you place it flat under your palm to keep it from sliding. You begin to send the repeat, slowly, like reading to someone who's hard of hearing. You send the destination first. You send the department line, then the surname, letter by letter, with spaces that feel almost exaggerated. When you finish, you wait for their acknowledgement, and you listen for certainty in the clicks. The answer comes back cleaner than before. They confirm the corrected spelling, and they add one more line. Delivery being made now to Foundry office. You let your shoulders soften just slightly. Not relief like a celebration, just the easing that comes when a knot in paper finally loosens. You write it down in the register margin, confirmed corrected destination, time noted. Then you pick up the held reply slip again, the one with the wrong letter in the signature. Now you know what happened. The reply was prepared by someone who saw the wrong spelling in their own copy. You can correct the letter before it becomes a quarrel inside the works, but you have to do it in a way that keeps the record honest. You take a fresh message form and you copy the reply onto it as a clean office transcript. You keep the words the same. You don't improve their phrasing. You only correct the signature spelling, and you mark the bottom, spelling confirmed by destination office, and you initial it in small letters. Then you clip the original reply slip behind your transcript. That way, anyone who asks later can see both the imperfect arrival and the careful correction. This is the clerk's quiet craft. You don't erase the world, you make it legible. The factory runner returns not long after, as if the works can feel the wire even from across town. He stands at the grill again, face calm but eyes searching. You hand him the transcript, not the messy original, and you keep the clip holding both pieces together. You tell him softly there was a letter drift, confirmed and corrected, and the Foundry has acknowledged the correct name. He nods, and this time you see the tension leave his jaw. He signs the pickup book with a quick hand, then tucks the message into his inner pocket like a tool. He doesn't thank you loudly. He only says, "Good," and then he's gone again. And the office returns to its smaller concerns: receipts, stamps, routing slips, and the slow clock behind the counter. For a while the wire behaves. It's not perfect, but the irregular chatter fades into something you can work with. You take advantage of the steadier stretch to catch up on the small backlog. You sort the receiving tray until it's nearly empty. You check the pigeonholes and pull any messages that have waited too long for delivery. A clerk learns the feel of time in paper edges. If a slip has been handled too often, the corners soften, and you know it's been waiting. You don't like that, so you prepare a new delivery bundle. You lay the messages in walking order again, clip them, and write the addresses in the messenger book for signatures. When the boy comes in, cheeks pink from the air outside, you hand him the bundle and watch him tuck it carefully into his satchel. He adjusts the strap with a practiced shrug, and then he's out again, quick steps fading down the corridor. The station beyond your door has its own rhythm. There are departures, arrivals, porters calling softly, and luggage wheels ticking over the tiles. In your room, the rhythm is smaller and closer to the hand. Stamp, write, tear, clip, send, log. And through it all, the line keeps its faint suggestion of trouble. Like weather you can smell before you see. By late afternoon, service traffic increases again. Not customer messages, but clerk to clerk notes, the kind that keep the system from tangling. One office asks if you're seeing delays, another reports a weak battery on their end, now corrected. Someone else says a pole line inspector has been notified about damp leakage on the downline. You copy each service note into the service log, because these messages explain the day later. They're the difference between a ledger that looks sloppy and one that makes sense. Then a longer service note arrives from the Divisional Control Office, the place that watches traffic flow like a station master watches platforms. They report that a segment of line will be taken out of service overnight for repair. Not immediately. Later, after the last evening passenger traffic, when it's easiest to isolate the circuit. But it will happen, and that means the network will change shape for a while, like water finding a different channel. You read the note twice, not because it's complicated, but because it affects what you must do before you close. If the line is rerouted tonight, any messages still outstanding need to be pushed through before the cut, or prepared to go another way. You reply with your acknowledgement, and you ask for the exact time the circuit will be opened. They send it back, a specific minute, precise as a timetable. You write it in the margin of your book. Now the clock matters again, not for a held message this time, but for the shape of the whole evening's work. As the daylight begins to fade, the station lamps outside the window flicker into life. Their glow turns the glass a warmer color, and the room feels more enclosed. You light your own desk lamp, and the smell of warming oil and metal rises gently. The flame steadies, and the brass shade throws a small circle of light over your forms. This is the part of the day when the public counter often slows. People are home. Suppers are being made. Shops are closing their shutters. But the wire can still be busy, because other towns are finishing their business too, sending last confirmations before night. A customer does come in. A man with a clean collar and a slightly worried face. He wants to know if a reply has come from his brother sent earlier in the day. You ask the name, the destination, the approximate time. You check the incoming pigeonhole and the hold drawer. Nothing yet. You tell him, calmly, not yet, but the line has been soft today and replies are slower. He nods, disappointed but not angry, and he leaves his name so you can send word if it arrives. You write it on a small note and pin it under the desk rail where you can see it. That is another part of the work, holding small human hopes without letting them spill across your books. Behind the partition, the sounder taps again. A message comes in marked as a repeat, which means it has already been sent once and arrived unclear. You copy it carefully, comparing the repeated version to the first one in your book. One word is different, and you can see how it happened. A thin dash heard as two dots, a letter sliding into another. You cross out the wrong word in your copy with a single neat line, and you write the corrected word above it. You initial the change, then you file the repeat slip behind the original so the record shows the correction was made. The day becomes full of these small stitches, nothing dramatic, just careful repair of meaning. Another service message arrives, this one from the station that will become your alternate route after the overnight cut. They ask you to route any late traffic through them, starting at the repair time. They give their call sign and a brief instruction about how they want the header written. You copy it into your routing notes, a page kept for these temporary changes. Then you look at your outgoing stack and your pending inquiries, and you begin to plan the rest of the shift. There's the ordinary closing work, balancing fees, tying ledgers, cleaning instruments. And now there's this additional job, making sure anything in motion won't be stranded when the line is lifted out for repair. You take a moment to scan the day's outgoing stubs for anything that has not yet received a reply, anything that might prompt a customer to return. You don't chase replies. That's not how it works. But you like to know what questions might walk back in before closing. And as you do, your eyes land on the verify tray again, the corner of your desk you tried to forget. The smudged overnight slip is still there. It has waited through the whole day, quiet as a stone. You haven't had time to resolve it, and the line trouble has made everything else feel more urgent. But now, with the lamps lit and the pace slightly slower, the old question returns: a receipt number that doesn't match, a destination code half erased. It's not a customer standing in front of you, it's just paper. Still, paper is what keeps this office honest. So you pull the slip toward you and you set it under the lamp. The ink smear looks different in lamplight than it did in morning grey. You tilt the paper slightly and you can see where the pencil pressure indented the fibers. Sometimes you can read an uncertain letter by the groove it left, not the ink. You take a clean blotter sheet and lay it beneath to give the slip a softer backing. Then you look at the destination code again, the small group of letters and numbers that tells the network where to send it. One character is clear, another is a blur, and one is missing entirely, as if torn away. You compare it to the code list book, the one kept in the drawer for common destinations. You run your finger down the column, looking for patterns. A code that begins with the same clear character, a code that would fit the shape of the smudge. It's slow work, the kind that doesn't feel like progress until it suddenly does. You find two possibilities. One would send the message to a coastal town. The other would send it inland, to a place with a similar name, but a different route. Either one could be right, if the smear hides the right stroke. And the receipt number still bothers you because it matches a different transaction in the register. You take out yesterday's carbon copies again. You flip carefully through the thin pages, each one a pale shadow of a message once spoken aloud. You look for anything with a destination that resembles these two code possibilities. There are several. Railway business. Private notes. A short instruction to a shipping agent. Then you find one with a similar word pattern to what you can just barely make out on the smudged slip. Not the same, but close enough to raise your attention. You lay the two papers side by side. The carbon copy is crisp, the smudged slip is not. But the sender name looks similar, a flourish on the first letter that your eye recognizes. And in the body, there's a word that repeats, a name of a product or a person, written in the same hand. Now you have a new possibility. The smudged slip might not be a new message at all. It might be a misfiled copy, pulled from yesterday's stack and dropped into the overnight basket by mistake. If that's true, the receipt number mismatch makes sense, because it belongs to yesterday, and the message belongs to yesterday, but it was already recorded under a different form. You check the carbon copy's receipt number. It matches the register. So why is there a second slip with the same receipt number? That's the new question. You turn the smudged slip over. Sometimes the back tells the story. A clerk might have written a routing note. A messenger might have marked delivery. A station might have stamped it in transit. On this one, there is a faint stamp impression, not inked strongly, but pressed into the paper. You angle it under the lamp again. It looks like a partial station mark from an office further down the line, not yours. And that changes things, because it means the slip traveled. It was handled elsewhere. It wasn't just a stray copy in your own drawer. You feel the quiet satisfaction of a clue, even if it brings more work. You write a note to yourself, faint stamp from downline office, investigate possible duplicate receipt slip. Then you consider how to verify it without making a fuss. You could send a service inquiry to the stamped office, asking if they have record of a message with that receipt number and whether a duplicate slip was made. It's a small question, but it touches accounting, and accounting makes people defensive. So you phrase it gently, like you're asking for help, not accusing. You sit at the key, and you send the inquiry. Request check, receipt number as follows. Possible duplicate slip received here. Can you confirm origin and destination code as recorded? You add no urgency for reconciliation. That last part matters. It tells them you're not sounding an alarm, you're just trying to keep the books clean. The answer will take time. It might not come before closing. But at least the question is now moving through the network, not sitting silently on your desk. And now, with the repair cut scheduled and the lamps lit, the day leans towards its final stretch. You glance once more at the note from Divisional Control, and you copy the repair time onto a small card. You slide the card under the glass paperweight where it can't wander. You don't want to keep looking up at the wall clock every minute. You want the time to be there, heavy and still, right in your line of sight. The lamp makes a warm circle on the desk, and everything outside it feels farther away. The brass shade holds the light like a bowl. Your hands, in that circle, look steady and capable, even when the wire isn't. A train rolls in on the far platform, and the whole building gives a low, patient tremble. Steam breathes against the window glass, then fades. You hear a porter call a name, not loud, just enough. Then the station settles again into small movements. And behind the partition, the sounder waits, ready to speak. You take the outgoing stack and separate it into two piles, the way you've learned to do on uncertain evenings. One pile is for messages that must go on the main route and should be pushed through before the cut. The other is for messages that can take the alternate station without anyone minding. Most customers never know the route. They only know the reply time. But you know that a reroute adds a few minutes, sometimes more. So you keep the urgent and time-sensitive slips closer to your hand. You keep the routine ones in a neat, patient row. You step behind the partition again, and the wire room's air feels slightly cooler than the counter space. The table has a polished wear where wrists have rested for years. The key sits where it always sits, and the sounder's little armature is poised like a listening ear. You send a short service call to the alternate station, just to confirm they're still ready. They answer promptly, their clicks firm, the kind that sound like a dry twig snapping clean. You make a small note, alternate route responsive, signal strong. It's a comfort, plain and practical. Then you send a routing notice to the next office on your usual path. You tell them, in the agreed shorthand, that after the repair time you'll be routing down line traffic via the alternate. You add the cut time again because repetition is kindness on a busy circuit. They acknowledge, a quick set of taps, and you can almost picture another clerk nodding without looking up. That is how the system stays polite, not with speeches, but with tidy confirmations. A customer bell tinkles, faint through the partition, and you rise from the stool. You step back out to the public counter and find a man waiting, hat held against his chest. His coat is brushed clean, but his eyes have the distracted look of someone balancing two places at once. He asks if you can send a message to a hotel in the city to hold a late supper for an arriving party. You nod, and you pull a blank form forward. You guide his long sentence into a shorter one. Hold supper for 4 arriving late train stop. He nods, relieved by the clarity, as if the shorter message is easier to trust. You count the words, name the fee, and accept the coins with a soft clink. You stamp the time, and the stamp's thump feels steady in your palm. As he leaves, you glance toward the verified tray again, not because you expect an answer, but because you've sent the inquiry out. Questions on the wire are like letters in the post. You can't rush them with staring. So you return to the routine that can be finished by hand. You open the register book and run your finger down today's receipt numbers. You check that each one has a matching form filed and a matching timestamp. It's repetitive, and that is the point. Repetition is how you catch the one thing that doesn't belong. When you reach the middle of the page, you slow. There are the receipt numbers from the morning rush, clean and sequential. There is the factory runner's urgent message, noted with its promised time. There is your pencil margin note about the spelling drift, now resolved. And then, nearer the bottom, you see a gap where a receipt number was voided earlier because a customer changed their mind before paying. You remember that moment now, the hesitation, the form torn and discarded properly. You make sure the voided number is clearly marked, so it can't be mistaken later. Accounting is not only about money, it's about explanations. The sounder clicks behind the partition, faint but insistent, and you go back in. A service message comes through from the next station down line. They report their signal is worsening, and they've been told the repair crew will begin isolating sections earlier than planned. Not a full cut yet, but preparations. That means switches being tested, circuits being momentarily opened, little interruptions that feel like hiccups in the current. You acknowledge and you write it in the service log because now the evening has a new texture. Not dramatic, just less predictable. You take a breath and make a small decision. You'll clear as much outgoing traffic as you can, as early as you can, before the line becomes restless. You pull the first slip from your urgent pile, the hotel message, and you send it. The acknowledgement returns clean. You send the next, an order for spare parts that arrived at the counter just before dusk. You send a third, a short note about a wagon arrival time. Each one goes out with the same calm rhythm: call sign, address, word count, body, stop, signature, end, acknowledge, stamp, file. It's like sweeping a floor in long strokes, moving dust toward the door. After a handful of messages, the line softens again. You hear the faint double taps, the slight smearing of a dash. Not enough to stop work, but enough to slow it. You request a repeat on a town name, just to be sure. They repeat it, a little impatient perhaps, but still polite. You copy it cleanly, and you send your acknowledgement with extra clarity, as if good manners might improve the current. It doesn't, but it keeps the day from feeling sharp. Between transmissions, you glance at the small stack of undelivered messages in the local pigeonhole. Most have already gone with the messenger's last run, but a few came in too late, and their addresses are beyond the boundary. Those are held for morning delivery unless the fee includes special dispatch, which it usually doesn't. You take those slips and place them in the night drawer, not closing it yet, just preparing. The night drawer is a quiet promise to the next shift. Everything inside it will make sense to someone else if you label it well. Another customer arrives, a young man smelling of machine oil, likely from the works. He wants to send a quick note to an address in the next town, asking for a meeting at first light. You take the message, count the words, and he pays without argument. People who work with machines tend to respect systems. You stamp the form, and you place it on the outgoing pile for the alternate route, because by now the usual line is sulking. You'll send it that way, and it will arrive a little later, but reliably. That's the trade. Speed for certainty. The sounder gives a brief call sign you don't expect, and you lean in. It's the downline office you asked about the smudged slip. They've answered sooner than you thought. You steady your pencil, and you copy as they send. They say they have a record of a message associated with that receipt number, but they describe it as a transit item, not a public counter item. They add that a duplicate slip was made because the original was smeared by rain during a handoff. They give the destination code as they recorded it, and it matches one of the two possibilities you found under lamplight: the coastal town. They end with a simple note: duplicate sent onward, original filed. Sorry for confusion. You feel the day's small pebble shift underfoot. Not gone, but moved into a clearer shape. Now you know why the slip exists. It's a duplicate, made in good faith with a destination code that can be confirmed. But the receipt number still doesn't fit your book, because it shouldn't have been in your overnight basket at all, unless it was returned. Unless something about it didn't complete cleanly. You turn the smudged slip over again, and you look at that faint stamp impression. It makes more sense now, the downline office mark. So the slip didn't start with you. It visited you later, like a letter sent back to a sender. You send a calm reply to the downline office. You thank them, and you ask one more question. The question that matters for reconciliation. Was the message delivered, or did it bounce back? And if so, why? You keep it plain, not accusatory. Delivered ? Or returned undelivered ? Reason. They acknowledge, but they don't answer yet. They might need to check a delivery book or a file drawer. So again, you wait. But waiting feels easier now because you have a story forming. You return to the public counter, and for a while there are no customers. This happens often in the early evening. People have settled into homes, and whatever couldn't be said by letter is being said by voice over supper tables. You use the quiet to do the steadying work that closes a day. You fold the used message forms into a neat bundle for filing. You align their edges against the desk with a soft tap. You check that each has a matching receipt stub or a note for service traffic, and that nothing is floating loose. Loose paper is where trouble hides. So you make it all sit still. In older offices, and yours still keeps the habit, you also keep a tally sheet for word counts. Not just money, but volume. How many words sent, how many received. It's used for reporting, for staffing arguments, for deciding whether the office needs another clerk. You take your pencil and add the columns carefully. It's the kind of arithmetic you can almost do by feel after a few years. Still, you do it slowly because tired mistakes look like lies on paper. You check each sum twice. Then you sign your initials at the bottom, small and neat. A service call comes through again, this time from Divisional Control. They confirm the repair crew has arrived at the section house near the troubled stretch. Traffic will be limited, then rerouted, and then the line will be opened fully for work. They remind all officers to clear priority traffic and to mark rerouted messages properly. You acknowledge, and you glance at your small card under the paperweight. The cut is approaching. The evening has a shape now, like a train you can hear coming long before it arrives. You make another quiet decision. You'll warn any customers who come in late, even if they don't ask. Not with alarm, just with honest information. So if someone sends a message that will likely be delayed, you'll tell them gently. It's better to set expectation than to have someone return angry tomorrow. A telegraph office runs on trust as much as on copper wire. The door opens, and a woman steps in with a scarf drawn over her hair. She looks like she's come straight from washing up, hands red from hot water. She wants to send a message to her son who works on the railway in another town. She speaks his lodging address from memory, careful and a little proud. The message is simple. Come home Sunday stop. You write it cleanly, and when you count the words, she nods as if she already knew the cost. When you take her coins, you tell her, softly, the line is being repaired overnight, so replies may come a little later than usual. She says that's all right. Sunday is not tonight. And you feel how different kinds of messages carry different kinds of time inside them. You send her message via the alternate route because by now the main line is too uncertain to be polite. The alternate station answers quickly, the clicks are firm, you transmit the message, receive acknowledgement, stamp the time, and file your copy. You return to the counter, and the woman leaves with her receipt folded small. She holds it like proof that the thought has been sent. The room grows quieter again. Outside, the station lamps glow steadily, reflected in the window glass as small yellow beads. A porter's footsteps pass, then fade. The clock continues its calm ticking, indifferent to networks and repairs. You check the cash drawer again, more from habit than fear. The stacks of coins look right. The receipts match. You close the drawer with a soft final push, though you'll open it again before you're done. Back in the wire room, you begin the evening instrument care, not the full covering yet, just the small maintenance that keeps things crisp. You wipe the key's base plate with a cloth. You brush a little dust from the relay. You check the tension screw and leave it where it belongs. Not over-tuned. It's easy, when a line is weak, to adjust too far, chasing a problem that's not inside your room. Experience teaches restraint. So you clean, but you don't fight the wire. A message comes in, and it's one of those short technical notes that feels like a whisper between workers. The next station asks you to hold all downline traffic for a few minutes because they're switching to the alternate route at their end. You acknowledge, and you stop sending down line for the moment. This is where the clerk becomes a kind of traffic guard, not standing in the road, but sitting at a table. You don't control the weather. You don't control the repair crew. But you can prevent a message from being launched into a closed gate. So you wait, hands resting on the desk edge. While you wait, you look at your pending items list. There's the note pinned under the desk rail for the man waiting on a reply. There are the few undelivered local messages in the night drawer. There's the smudged slip and your inquiry, now half answered. The day has become a set of small open loops, each one needing a gentle knot before you can lock the door. You don't rush. You just keep returning to each loop, one at a time. The sounder clicks again and you straighten. The downline office answers your second question about the smudged slip. They say the message was sent onward, but it was later returned to them marked address insufficient at destination. They had attempted to correct it, made the duplicate slip, and resent. They believe the corrected version was delivered, but the original was retained as a record and mistakenly placed into outgoing transit papers. From there, it likely traveled in a packet and ended up in your overnight basket. They apologize again, and they offer the final destination and addressee name as confirmed. Now the story sits fully on your desk. It's not theft. It's not a scandal. It's a paper mistake born from rain, smudging, a duplicate, and a returned undelivered mark. Exactly the kind of thing that happens when a system is fast but physical. The telegraph is electricity, yes, but it's also satchels, stamps, and tired hands at the end of a wet day. You feel a calm satisfaction, the kind that comes when a mystery turns into a filing decision. Now you can reconcile. You take the smudged slip and write a neat note on a fresh piece of paper. Duplicate created downline due to smear, original returned, corrected resent and delivered, slip received in error, no action required beyond filing. You include the downline office name and the time of their confirmation. Then you clip this note to the smudged slip and place both into the pending inquiry folder. But now pending is only for documentation, not a question anymore. It's a closed loop. You also make a short entry in your own ledger margin, referencing the receipt number and the explanation. That way, if an auditor or station master ever asks, the answer is ready. Paper likes being ready. The next station signals that their switch to the alternate route is complete. They tell you to begin routing via the alternate station from now on. You acknowledge, and you feel the evening shift a notch. Now you will send in a slightly different pattern. Instead of calling the usual next office on the main path, you will call the alternate and let them relay. It's like sending a letter by a different coach road. The destination remains, but the stops change. You pull your waiting outgoing pile forward and mark the headers accordingly, just as instructed. A small notation at the top, via alternate, then the call sign. You don't want any clerk down the line to wonder why a message has appeared on an unexpected circuit. Confusion wastes time, and time is what everyone is trying to save. So you write the routing clearly, and you keep the forms aligned, edges square. Then you begin transmitting again. The alternate route is busier than usual, because many offices are using it, so acknowledgements take longer. You wait patient, hands relaxed, listening to the rhythm of other traffic threaded between yours. Sometimes you can hear it, in the way the line answers late, the way a call sign comes through, then another. It's not a single conversation. It's a shared hallway, with many doors opening and closing. You send your message when the hallway is free. You don't force your way through. A customer arrives at the counter again, and you step out. It's the man from earlier, asking about his brother's reply. You check again, and still nothing has come. You tell him, gently, the reroute has begun and replies may be delayed. He sighs, not dramatically, just the sound of a person accepting a slow system. He says he will come back tomorrow morning. You nod, and you pin a slightly larger note under the desk rail, adding that he will return. A small reminder to your future self or to the next clerk. The evening continues like this, in alternating quiet and small duties. A telegram arrives for a local shop, and you place it in the night drawer because the messenger is done for the day. Another comes for a traveler staying at the boarding house near the station. That one you can deliver yourself, in a way, by handing it to the station porter who knows the place. You write in the delivery book, delivered to porter for handoff, and you initial it. It's not ideal, but it's common. The telegraph office and the station staff share small responsibilities. They're all part of the same building's brain. In the wire room, the service notes grow more frequent as the cut approaches. Clerks ask each other, "Are you live? Are you switched?" Can you take relays? You answer when you can. You decline when you must. You write each service interaction in the log, because later, when someone asks why a message arrived late, the log will be your memory. A clerk's memory is never trusted without ink, so you make ink do the remembering. The cut time arrives, and you feel it more than you see it. The main line's background softness becomes a clean silence, as if a distant hum has been turned off. Then the alternate route becomes the whole world. You keep your pencil near the margin of the message book, because now you'll be writing more notes than usual. The alternate circuit has its own tone, a slightly different weight to the clicks, like a familiar voice with a different room behind it. You send a short routing test, just a few characters, and wait for the confirming tap that says you're heard. It comes back a moment later than you'd like, but it comes back clean. You mark the service log with the exact minute the reroute went fully active, because later that note will matter. This is when the clerk's work shifts from sending words to managing flow. The public counter doesn't see the change, but you feel it in your wrists. When you send on the alternate, you must add the routing header every time, and that adds small seconds. Small seconds become whole minutes when the line is busy. You take the next outgoing slip from the pile and make the header note in your own hand, via alternate station, then the call sign, then the destination. You do it the same way each time, so your eyes don't have to decide anew. The first message goes out, and you listen to the spaces between the taps, because the spaces tell you how crowded the circuit is. A crowded line has hesitant pauses, little waits that don't belong to any one sender. It's like hearing footsteps in a hallway outside your door. You send anyway, steady and polite, and the acknowledgement comes with a slight delay. You stamp the sent time, and you file the office copy, and your hand moves on to the next. A service message breaks in while you're preparing another transmission. The alternate station asks you to stand by for a relay, because another office is trying to push a batch through before their own closing. You answer yes, and you turn to a fresh page in the message book so you can copy without crowding. The relay traffic arrives in a quick series, each one short, each one businesslike. A request for wagons, a confirmation of a delivery, a note that a traveler will arrive late. You write them in neat strokes, stamp them, and then send them onward, all through the same alternate channel. It's repetitive work, but repetition is what makes it possible to do it without strain. Your hand learns the pattern and your mind can rest inside it. Out in the station, the last of the evening passengers thin away. You hear fewer footsteps now, fewer rolling trunks, fewer calls. The lamps outside glow more brightly in the dark, and their reflections in the window glass look like small moons. Inside, your desk lamp makes the only warm circle you need. But the day isn't finished, because the network is still awake. A message arrives for local pickup, stamped from another town, and marked urgent by the sender's choice. Urgent doesn't mean dramatic here. It means they paid extra, and they expect you to act like the clock matters. You read the addressee name, and you recognize it as the station hotel. You could hold it in the night drawer and let the hotel fetch it in the morning, but the urgent mark changes that. So, you take the slip, step out from behind the partition, and walk it to the porter's desk yourself. The porter looks up, tired but attentive, and you ask him to have it delivered to the hotel desk at once. He nods, takes it carefully, and signs your delivery book with a thick pencil. When you return, you write one small note beside the message entry, delivered by hand to porter, urgent fee. These small deviations from routine have to be recorded, because routine is what keeps later arguments from growing teeth. Back in the wire room, the sounder gives a call sign, and you answer out of habit. It's the Coastal Circuit Office, asking if you can take a repeat of a message they think might have been garbled during the reroute change. You check your book, find the entry, and you confirm the words as you copied them. Then you send a repeat, slow and clear, even though it's not your error. On a night like this, each office helps the others, because tomorrow the favor might need to travel back. The alternate station sends another service note, advising that the rerouted traffic is stacking and asking non-priority messages to be held if possible. You look at your outgoing pile and make a quick sorting decision. Anything with a delivery address that's time sensitive, you will send now. Anything that's plainly routine, you will hold and mark it for first thing tomorrow. This is not refusal, it's pacing. So you take a few of the least urgent slips and you stamp them accepted, then write in pencil, held due to reroute congestion. You place them into the night drawer with a clear note on top for the morning clerk. If someone asks later, there will be an explanation ready. And you keep transmitting the time-sensitive ones, one at a time with steady spacing. A message to a doctor, a message to a railway foreman about a crew change, a message to a business office about a shipment that must catch the first goods train. Each time you hear the acknowledgement, you feel a small easing because it means the words have landed somewhere beyond your lamplight. The trouble with reroutes is that replies may come back on unfamiliar paths. So you keep your ears open for call signs that don't usually belong to your evening. Sure enough, a few minutes later, you hear a station you rarely speak to directly. They're upstream on the alternate route, and they have a reply intended for your town, but their header is uncertain. They ask you to confirm your call sign, and you do. Then they send the message again, cleaner this time, and you copy it. It's for the man waiting on his brother's reply. You recognize the name the moment it's tapped out, because you pinned his note under the desk rail. His brother says only, "Delayed but safe. Letter follows. Do not worry." It's a simple sentence, the kind that fits the telegraph well. You stamp it received, and you glance at the clock, because now you have a choice. You could put it in the night drawer and let him wait until morning. Or you could send a porter to find him if he lives nearby, or if he might still be in the station hotel. You remember his face, the way he hovered, as if the building might produce the answer by sheer presence. So you make the small extra effort. You step out to the counter area and ask the porter if he's seen the man. And the porter says he's in the waiting room, sitting with his hat on his knees. You walk the message there yourself, quiet steps on the cool tiles. He looks up as you approach, and you don't dramatize it. You simply hand him the slip and watch his shoulders drop as he reads. He thanks you in a low voice, folds the paper carefully, and holds it in both hands as if it gives warmth. When you return to your desk, you write a note in the delivery book, delivered by hand to addressee in waiting room time. Then you take down the pinned reminder under the desk rail because that loop is now closed. It's satisfying in a small, quiet way. The night is doing what nights often do in a telegraph office. It's turning from public service to system housekeeping. The messages now are more often between offices than between ordinary people. Clerks confirming that they've switched, clerks asking for repeats, clerks warning of congestion. You copy each service note and file it in the log, because this night will need explaining tomorrow. The main line is still silent, and that silence feels strange when you've spent all day listening to its faint imperfections. A working line has presence, even when it's quiet. A cut line feels like a closed door. Every so often, you try a light test call on the main circuit, not to interfere, just to see if it's still dead. No answer comes as expected, and you stop. You don't want to be the reason a repair crew gets a surprise spark. Near the end of the evening traffic window, the alternate route sends a service notice that their office will be reducing staff for the night. They can still pass priority traffic, but non-essential relays may be delayed until early morning. You read the note twice and you nod to yourself because that matches your own instincts. It's time to begin closing work in earnest. You take the cash box again, set it under the lamp, and open the drawer with its familiar soft scrape. You count the coins slowly, stacks neat, edges aligned. You compare the total to the fee column in the register book. When the numbers match, you don't feel joy. You feel steadiness. Then you check the delivery fees collected separately, making sure the messenger's returned coins match the delivery book notes. A clerk's work is full of these small matching exercises. The mind rests when things align. You take the day's ledger bundle and tighten the tape around it, then press it flat. Paper swells as the day goes on. It's a physical record of how busy the town has been. You add a brief note at the top of the service log page: main line cut, traffic rerouted, repairs scheduled overnight. Not because you'll forget, because paper must never rely on memory. And as you write, you notice how your handwriting has changed slightly with the lamplight and the long hours. Still legible, still careful, but a touch heavier. You flex your fingers once, quietly, and return to the work. In the wire room, you begin preparing the instruments for a night's state, not fully closed, but protected. You wipe the key again and check that no grit has crept under the contact. You brush a thin line of dust off the sounder base with a cloth, careful not to snag any wires. You look at the relay contacts, clean enough, and decide not to fuss. Over-adjustment is how you create tomorrow's trouble. Then you turn to the night drawer because it will carry part of your responsibility forward. You open it and lay the undelivered messages inside in tidy order. First, the ones for local delivery beyond the boundary, marked morning route. Then the accepted but held outgoing slips marked reroute congestion. Then a few incoming messages that arrived after the messenger's last run, each stamped and ready. On top, you place a clear note for the morning clerk in your calmest handwriting. Main line under repair overnight. Alternate route in use. Expect delayed acknowledgements. Held messages in night drawer. You sign your initials and the time. This note will be read with morning eyes, and it has to make sense at a glance. A final service message comes in while you're doing this. The downline office reports that the repair crew has found damp leakage at a joint box near a bridge, and they're replacing insulators. They don't embellish. They just state the work and a probable restoration time. You copy it, and you make one last entry in the service log. You can picture it easily. A crew under lantern light, hands on cold hardware, turning screws with slow patience. It's a different kind of quiet job, but it belongs to the same system. For a moment, you feel connected to them, worker to worker, through the shared goal of a clean click. The alternate route quiets, not fully silent, but thinner. Fewer calls, more pauses. The station outside your office grows still, and the sounds become larger because there are fewer of them. A distant door closing, a porter's slow footsteps, the soft settling hiss of a cooling engine far down the platform. You look around your desk and check for loose ends. The verify tray that held the smudged slip is now empty, and that emptiness feels earned. The factory urgent message is long resolved, filed with its corrected transcript. The man's reply was delivered by hand, and his pinned reminder is gone. The day's paper loops have been tied into bundles. Still, you know from experience that a telegraph office rarely offers a perfect ending. There is always something in transit, something waiting, something that will be tomorrow's first sound. You begin to dim the lamp slightly, not out, just lower, and the circle of light tightens. This makes the room feel calmer. The edges go soft. You can almost imagine the desk floating in the dark. You take the cash box, close it, and lock it with a small key kept on a chain inside the drawer. You place it in the safe cupboard and turn that key too, listening for the quiet click of metal. Then you tie the register book with its tape, not sealing it away, but marking it as finished for your shift. You press the tape down with your thumb, and the paper fibers take the pressure. You set the book in its proper place, square with the edge of the desk. The instruments are still active on the alternate route, but only barely. You keep them uncovered for now because you are still responsible until the office is officially closed. A last customer appears at the counter, surprising you with the soft bell. He's a late arriving traveler, coat damp, hair flattened by the night air. He wants to send a message ahead to a relative in a nearby village, letting them know he'll arrive on the morning train. You take the form and guide his words into the simplest shape. Arrive morning train, stop, meet station, stop. You count the words and name the fee, and he pays without hesitation. When you stamp the time, the stamp feels heavier than it did in the morning, not because it weighs more, because your hand is more tired. You tell him gently, that the line is rerouted tonight, so delivery may be slightly delayed. But the message will go. He nods, grateful for any certainty. You mark the header for the alternate route and send it, waiting for the acknowledgement. It comes, clean and firm, and you feel a small internal nod. Even on a changed network, the work still holds. After he leaves, the office is yours again, quiet and dim. You step behind the partition and listen to the sounder. A few faint taps come through, then stop. The alternate station sends a final service note, reducing night traffic to emergency only, and then their line goes still. You acknowledge, and you write it down. Then you sit for a moment with your hands resting on the table, not doing, just being present. The telegraph office at night has a particular feeling. The air smells of warmed oil and paper. The wood holds the day's heat in its grain. The metal parts cool slowly, as if they're reluctant to let go. You reach for the sounder's quieting switch, and you silence it. Not because you dislike it, but because the office must sleep too. The sudden absence of clicks is noticeable. It's like a conversation stopping mid-room. You cover the instruments with their cloth, a simple protective gesture, keeping dust from settling on the contacts. You smooth the cloth once, so it lies flat. Then you turn to the desk, and you gather the few remaining loose items. The pencil goes in its tray, the stamp returns to its pad, the pad closes. The code book goes back into the drawer, spine facing up so it can be grabbed quickly tomorrow. You open the night drawer one more time to confirm the note sits on top. Readable. You close it gently. The lock on that drawer is not heavy security, it's more like a promise that the contents will be treated as official. You stand and you listen, because a clerk learns to listen even when the work is done. The station is almost silent now. Far away, a night watchman steps past, slow and measured. A door closes softly, and the building settles again. You check the wall clock one more time, and then you stop checking. There's nothing left tonight that depends on minutes. Only tomorrow we'll need them again. You move to the front counter area and look at the public space with the lamp dimmed. The brass grill catches a faint glint. The tiled floor looks darker, and the grout lines form a quiet grid. You can see the outline where people stood today, in your memory if not on the tiles. Shopkeepers, runners, travelers, all of them turned speech into paper, and paper into clicks. You take the office keys from their hook and feel their familiar weight. You lock the cash cupboard, you lock the message drawer, you lock the outer desk. Each lock makes the same small sound, a tidy end to a tidy responsibility. Before you leave, you write one last memo on a scrap card and place it where the morning clerk will see it first. Main line cut and under repair, alternate used